Well, hopefully you're all okay. Welcome all. We've got a whole room full of people here, and I'm going to do the introduction and kind of get things rolling. Thank you all very much for coming. You'll see in the agenda randomly. What I'll do is I'll throw the agenda back in there. You'll see the links and all the information in there as well if you'd like. And thank you all again very much for attending for today. I'm Jason Bruns. I'm the director of the Minnesota State Engineering Center of Excellence, and with me is my partner in crime today is Chris Williams. He's the assistant director of the Minnesota State Advanced Manufacturing Center of Excellence. And again, thank you all for attending. Just something to keep in mind. In the agenda, you will see that there's a link for a survey and a QR code. The way that we get things better is if we have feedback and how we make that work. So we would appreciate that feedback. Give us some insight, other things that you'd like to hear spoken about, that kind of thing as well. Please let us know, and we'd love to have that. Also, the videos will be available on our website. So those of you looking for professional development or friends that are looking for professional development, we can share that with you as well, or you can have availability to that. Go to that website, watch the video, and I'll send you a couple questions just to make sure that you watched it. So the other thing is just enjoy yourself. Reach out for any questions. I'll try to fly flank. This is the first time we've kind of done this hybrid kind of thing, and we're kind of figuring ourselves out here. So we're going to trip over each other, but you know what? We're going to have fun doing it. So at the end of the day, there's no heavy lifting. What I'll do randomly is throw the agenda into the chat line. So anticipate seeing that as well. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce our speakers for today. So, and the people that are contributing for our event today. So first is Ron Adams. Ron is a program specialist with DEED, Vocational Rehabilitation Services. Ron is a program specialist there, and he's worked there for 16 years, has a variety of roles assisting people with disabilities and finding employment with a focus on job seekers that are deaf, hard of hearing. Ron coordinates with businesses, community partners, and placement coordinators to find opportunities for program participants throughout the state of Minnesota. And Ron's contact information is also on the agenda as well. Marcy Jasper, she is a business consultant with DEED as well, Vocational Rehabilitation Services. She's been there for 19 years. In the past 12 years, her focus has been on connecting with local and national businesses to assist them and diversifying their workforce by including people with disabilities. Marcy enjoys thinking outside the box and helping businesses problem solve on workforce shortages and retention issues. Her passion working with people with disabilities has spanned over 27 years in several capacities. Alyssa Klein, she's a youth services coordinator with DEED, Vocational Rehabilitation Services. Alyssa has worked for VRS for over 25 years. She began her tenure as a career guidance counselor for young adults with disabilities. In her current state role, she works on policy, leads interagency initiatives, and provides training and technical assistance to staff, stakeholders, related to assisting youth with disabilities to be successful in post-secondary education and employment. Her primary interest is to see that all people with disabilities have the information, opportunities, and supports needed to explore, prepare for, and be successful in careers. Michelle, Michelle Shimaleski. Michelle Shimaleski, very good. My goodness. I feel like I should hear some polka music in there someplace. Michelle has been with VRS for over 10 years, supporting businesses committed to diversifying their workforce and creating opportunities to be inclusive of people with disabilities. Michelle is an effective problem solver and assists businesses and job seekers to develop effective strategies to meet the hiring needs of businesses by providing qualified talent. She has partnered with multiple employers to hire and retain talent while supporting the businesses and new employees to create successful employer-employee matches. And finally, Steve Kalina with MPMA, President and CEO. He's a trade association that represents hundreds of precision manufacturers from around the state, primarily focusing on workforce development and legislative influence. Prior to his role with MPMA, Steve was president of Dynamic Group, a contract manufacturer and a longtime member of MPMA. After 20 years in industry, Steve recently completed a finance degree at Bethel University. So we're blessed to be able to have these people with us, and I hope you enjoy the presentation today about disabilities. And like I said, I'll be throwing the agenda into the chat line. And also, please be sure to go in and populate that survey at the very end. We're going to walk our way through it. I think we anticipated approximately the full 2 hours, but actually maybe even a little bit shorter than that. At the end of the day, when we're done, we're done. It's all great to be able to have this opportunity. So thank you all for joining us. Questions, go ahead and throw them into the chat for those online, and I can support those. And I'll help you with regards to Marcy. I'll help you with regards to anything in the chat, and I can kick those back to you, and we'll work together. No, actually, you'll sit at yours, and you'll pull up your control.
Oh, okay. I was doing this for like online, it was not.
Otherwise, you can sit right here too if you'd like. I've got it all set up.
Maybe easier because I'm not stuck behind you and I can chat with you.
All right, all right, all right. Let's see, let's do this. Everyone in the meeting, let me go ahead and share this out.
I'm gonna pass those down. Don't do anything with it yet though, as I hand them out. I got some special instructions.
There you go.
Know what people are seeing online.
They're seeing me, I think.
And I click resume share and then it doesn't show the presentation.
Yep.
It is. Yep, do think again. Yeah, let me see those.
So now you can take over. There you go. You ready?
It might just not show it on your screen, Jason. Do you see it from yours, what they're showing?
No, I do not.
See, every time I click on it, then it stops sharing, pauses it. How weird. I'm gonna do a new share. That's a screen. There.
And now do you have control over this?
Nope, Alyssa does.
Okay, sorry.
All right. Hi, everyone. As Jason said, I'm Marcy Jasper with Vocational Rehab Services. And thanks for having us here today. We are going to be talking down the road more about youth with disabilities and transitioning into employment. But before we get into that, we really wanted to kind of lay the groundwork and talk about just kind of disability in general first and get people's mind kind of wrapped around that. So we are going to start with a quiz. So for those online, I put it in the chat. You're going to see a disability quiz come up. If you guys can even just open that, if you have access to a printer, great. If not, open it up. The one I really would like everybody to do is the last one, number 8, but all of them if you can. Here's going to be the difference though that you guys are going to do it. What I'd like you to do is use your non-dominant hand to do this quiz. So left hand if you're right, right hand if you're left, if you're ambidextrous, take off your shoes, do something that's not comfortable for you. So I'll just give you a couple minutes to do this quiz. You're not seeing it. Can you try to put it on again? The document. Or it's not opening. I will do it again. All right, she put the document in the chat again. Oh, there, I think it worked. Yep. Just got on afterwards. Right. All right, 30 more seconds. So if you're not to number 8, if you can do 8. All right. So first question I have for all you guys is, how did that feel? Feel free to put in the chat too how it felt using your non-dominant hand. Awkward? Uncomfortable? Distracting, slow. Any idea why I'd have you do that?
We can feel what it's like to be in that situation.
Yep, disability is a group you can join at any time. So I think of having a stroke, being in a car accident, and now you need to learn how to write with your non-dominant hand, or you don't have function of your dominant side anymore. So just getting people, you know, in the mindset of, again, this is the only minority group that we could join at any time. As we had a coworker that would say, we're all just one banana peel away from a disability, which, you know, is quite accurate. You never know what's going to happen on any given day. So I like to start off with that again, just to get people kind of in the mind of a little different of a mindset. All right, so let's go with the first one. Hiring employees with disabilities increases work comps rates. False. Yep, it's obviously they're based solely on the relative hazards of the company's operations and its accident experience. Some of these questions, as you're probably going through them, they look ridiculous. Like, really, are you really asking me these? But sadly, as we go out and talk to businesses, these are questions that still continue to come up. So we do want to address them. Employees with disabilities have a higher absentee rate than employees without disabilities. False. Yep. There are many studies on the subject. There's a DuPont study, and it's a long-term study that they do, that it shows that absentee rates are no higher. And other studies show that actually the rates are lower for people with disabilities. So number 3, considerable expense is necessary to accommodate workers with disabilities. False. That accommodation is very scary for people, like, because right away people go to, it's expensive, it's going to cost. And actually, most accommodations cost nothing at all. And in fact, when you really think of any of us, disability or not, we need some sort of accommodations in our job, whether it costs anything or not. So research shows that many people with disabilities, again, require no special accommodations, or if it's needed, the majority are at no cost or low cost, can be up to $500. Which for a business isn't always a huge expense when it's coming to an accommodation. All right. Just over 1 in 4 of today's 20-year-olds will become disabled before they retire. Yeah, that's true. That's a stat from the Social Security Administration.
I think there's 25% of the entire population has a disability.
Well, you are ready, or you're going forward in my presentation. You're
Sorry.
not ready.
You take NPR this morning because I looked at all about disability comes to voting. So
Interesting.
Yep.
I love it. All right. So many people, people with disabilities always need help.
False.
False. We'll get some statistics on here, but many people, a small amount of people were born with a disability. Actually, I don't know if we have in this one, but actually 15% of individuals with disabilities were actually born with their disability. 85% acquire it. And as we all know, we then learn to live with what we have, right? Live with our strengths, live with our limitations. So they don't always need help. They'll ask for it, or you can ask them if they need help. Don't feel awkward if they say no, because they are used to doing it alone. So. All right. Curious children should never ask people about their disabilities. False. And I have a quick story here. I was at a Twins game many years ago with a lady, and she was born with flippers. So her arms right up to here. And we were walking outside of the game, and there was a little boy with his grandpa, and he was on his bike. And the little boy kept looking at the lady, you know, because she looked different from him. And the grandpa kept pulling the boy away and said, "Stop staring, stop staring, stop." And like literally like moved him away from this lady. And the lady, you know, said, "I really wish he wouldn't do that, because now he's taught him to be scared of me just because I look different than him." Now, again, can you go up to any person with a disability and ask them, "Hey, what happened?" And are they going to be okay with it? No. But to teach a young child to look away at somebody that looks different from them is not always the best way to do it. All right, so this one gets kind of challenging for people. What set of words would not be the best to describe a person with a disability? You heard that this morning, didn't you?
But I have, you hear a lot of people who have disabilities. That's one of the things that they do not want to hear.
Absolutely. It is A, inspirational, courageous, and brave. Adjusting to a disability requires adapting to a lifestyle, not bravery or courage. They want to be known as Joe and as Bob the plumber. They don't want to be known as Bob the person with a disability.
It's a D, just like any group of the population. Why do we group them into a group and say, well, they are partly inspirational, or they are skilled, and they're just a group of people. They could, there could be lazy people, there could be, I mean, you know,
Exactly.
so to me, it's like, well, I wouldn't group any part of the population and say they're all one thing or another. So I would be.
I have to look at that one again, see that it even confuses me sometimes, but I see what you're saying. Yep. Yep.
All the
Yeah, we had a National Disability Employment Awareness Month was just last month is October. And so Vocational Rehab Services put on a presentation and had a panel, a live panel, and then we also did a bunch of videos of people with disabilities and what employment meant to them. And we're going to see one individual on a video here shortly that's going to kind of talk a little bit about his journey. But that was two of the individuals on the panel said that, like, I don't want people to tell me like, "You're so brave, you're so courageous because you have a disability." And she was a lady in a wheelchair. And she's like, "Again, I'm Allison, and that's what I want to be known as." So I thought it was really powerful coming from the individuals themselves. All right, so number 8, how did that, or 7, I don't have it in front of me. 7, no 8. Okay, anybody have what it said?
I think it's that tell words exactly as they sound to us.
Bingo. Yeah. Everybody get that? Yep. So that's a example of someone with a severe learning disability. That's how they would write that sentence. Makes sense to them. Hard for us to read, but it makes sense to them. So did everybody get that right? Or was there some? All right. So one of the biggest things is, what is a disability? Like that's, what does it mean? And there's a lot of different definitions out there. There's the ADA definition, there's the Rehab Act definition. Social Security has a definition if you want to get Social Security disability. So really there's a lot of definitions of what disability is out there. And so it doesn't surprise me that people are confused as to, do I have a disability? Do I not? Sometimes they may, sometimes they don't, type of thing. So with the ADA definition, as you can see on here, it talks about a physical or mental impairment. A person has a record of impairment or being regarded as having such an impairment. So what that one means, that last one, is that the person does not actually have a disability, but it's regarded as having a disability. So for an example, if somebody got a big burn on their face or a large birthmark on their face, they're considered by people to have a disability, but in reality, it presents no limitations or to their life activities. So that's what it means by being regarded as having such an impairment. We don't necessarily care for that definition. And I don't know, it's not very positive. So we really look more at like the Rehab Act of 1973, which really puts out there that Congress finds disabilities a natural part of the human experience and in no way diminishes the right of individuals to live independently, make choices, enjoy full inclusion. So disability, again, is a natural part of the human experience and should not preclude someone from full inclusion in society. So we're going to dive a little bit deeper just into some statistics and some etiquette here, and then really get into more of the youth piece of it. So here's just a very broad spectrum of disabilities. As everybody knows, the range of disabilities is as diverse as the population itself, and the way in which each individual experiences his or her disability expands the variables even more. As we say, you met one person with autism, that's exactly it. You met one person with autism, because everybody is different. So here's a little more of a list. This is a list from the Office of Federal Contractor Compliance, the program form. So a lot of businesses have probably seen these. Again, it's just a few examples. The list is definitely much, much longer. And again, as we talked about, like meeting one person, for example, multiple sclerosis, it can affect a person very different. Some people with multiple sclerosis, it affects their mind, and some it affects them physically. So again, very different. And so in our business, we labeling people with this disability can be kind of a challenge for us when we're going into even a business talking about it, because that doesn't define actually who they are. Because again, if you like, oh, my mother has MS and it affects her and she's in a wheelchair, well, this lady, that's not how it affects them. So really just kind of opening people's mind on just the range of disabilities.
Marcy, I
Yeah.
have a question. With a lot of discussions happening around the challenges of mental health, are you seeing an influx associated with disabilities, with people with mental health challenges to help them facilitate and work through? Is that something that you're seeing now as ramping up or becoming more prevalent, if I can ask that?
Yeah, absolutely. Mental health is one of the definitely the top disabilities out there. Unfortunately, COVID exacerbated that even more. And it's even at a higher rate now these days. For people that were quote unquote managing their mental health, COVID really put a lot of those folks into a different category. So yeah, mental health is definitely up there. The key piece of it is disclosing that or talking about it, or having people say that it's a disability. So we're running into that still too.
The number one disability category that we serve.
So as everyone knows, it's impossible to tell sometimes if somebody has a disability or not. There's many obvious clues like a service dog or a wheelchair, prosthetic limbs, if somebody's deaf or blind, those are obvious. But as Jason just mentioned, some of the biggest ones, the hidden disabilities being mental health, being the biggest, sometimes autism spectrum disorder, traumatic brain injury, some vision, some hearing, fibromyalgia, lupus, some of those that people aren't, you just can't see those. So thinking about your own circle of friends or family members, coworkers, you're likely to know at least one person with a disability. Because again, we'll get to the statistics of it. So 1 in 4. So even looking in this room or thinking about online, how many people have them around your area. So if you guys are comfortable raising hands, how many of you know somebody with a disability? Yeah. Pretty common out there, pretty common. So as we just saw with the show of hands, you probably are around people or work with people every day that have a disability. So just thinking about your own work environment, you're gonna continue to encounter people with disabilities every day. And so really just opening your mind, whether it's youth with disabilities, adults with disabilities, your brother, your sister, your child with a disability. Many disabilities are hidden or non-apparent, and it could present challenges sometimes when we are providing customer service in a public setting, when some of those disabilities are hidden. So really just kind of taking note of that again. All right, so here's the statistics. 1 in 4 people have a disability. In the 2010 census, they didn't do it in the 2020 census, and that's where, so we don't have a whole lot of up-to-date information when it comes to disability, unfortunately. 56 million Americans disclosed. We think that's closer to 61 or more that have disclosed that they have at least one diagnosable disability. Again, any statistics out there, not only on disability, but anything that you look for, numbers are all over the place. And the biggest thing we think with disability is, again, the people disclosing that they have a disability. And so we think these numbers are probably higher, a lot higher than this, unfortunately. But this is kind of what we can gather overall, is that 1 in 4. In Minnesota, 21.7% of adults in Minnesota have some type of disability. Again, it's how disability is defined and what survey you're using and all of that stuff. This one's from the Centers of Disease Control that we were able to get these statistics on, but they're really all over the place. It's difficult to capture percentages. Here's a breakdown of Minnesotans living with disabilities and the types of disabilities. So 25% are ambulatory in Minnesota. And then you can see just kind of going around, hearing is 18%, vision is 8%, cognitive 21%. It's some pretty big categories here. We think like the 25% of ambulatory is really kind of the aging population and the disabilities that come along with people as they age, kind of along with hearing and vision too.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Independent living, can you explain that as a disability? How is that?
Trying to think where this came from and how they describe these. No, that's okay.
I think it's more like how it impacts them. I was wondering that too, to be honest.
Let me get back with you on that, because I know we have yeah, let me get back to you on that. No, you're good. You're good. I need those questions. Okay, so we're going to move just briefly into etiquette and talk just a little bit about etiquette. If you Google etiquette, there's millions of things that come up when it comes to etiquette for people with disabilities. We've all come into awkward moments when it comes to people with disabilities, meeting someone who uses a wheelchair or a cane, somebody who's deaf and using an interpreter. If you're not used to something like this, it can kind of be awkward situations. So we just have we have a video at the end of this that's going to kind of show you some etiquette, and it's done by people with disabilities themselves, and it's a pretty cute video just on etiquette and how to just be yourself. So we'll watch that after we talk about person first language. So person first language is speaking to the person first. This is how I've always learned in working with people with disabilities to do it. Why do we use it? Because it shows respect to the individual. It is the person first and the disability second. It reinforces the person's self-respect, and it acknowledges people's abilities, not their disabilities. So that's kind of why we use it. And then some examples of person first language, as you can see on here. Again, there's a lot of talk out there, and some people don't choose it this way, which we'll talk about in a second. But for example, as you can see, person with an intellectual, cognitive, or development disability versus, I won't even say that word, and mentally defective, person who is blind instead of the blind. Now, I gotta look if it's on here. For somebody, a lot of times now, like somebody with autism, a lot of folks prefer to be called autistic instead of person with autism. So moving to the next slide, that's where it's disability first. And we're really finding that a lot more in these days, that especially like the millennials are really choosing to embrace their disability and choosing disability first versus person first. So what I always tell people, when you are out talking to somebody, I mean, when you're talking to somebody with a disability or something like this comes up, or you're just however it is I always use person first. And if they correct me, then that's the route I'll go. is using disability first and kind of going that route. But I've always been taught person first. I think that's a majority of us is how we use that. But disability first is fast and furious becoming pretty popular out there. Like I said, with a lot of the millennials. So here is a little video that we're going to watch that talks a little bit more about etiquette. And like I said, it's done by people with disabilities themselves. After the ad.
Do I need to stop sharing? Probably get the
The sound.
Sorry, get there. Share sound, it's on, okay. Go back. Skip ad.
Right now, it's, yeah, Marcy's computer and so.
How do I do that? Why is it the sound?
Is it working online? One person said it was working before. It was working.
Yeah, it's not working.
You need to correct
You
it.
need to unmute, maybe Marcy mute and Alyssa unmute.
Oh, unmute.
Unmute.
Try to.
I'm gonna continue.
You can mute.
Good morning, Bob. Morning there.
It's not going on the speakers.
Morning.
If I need my sign.
Alice.
But now we can't hear it in here. Which it was working before with the speakers and we tried it.
Okay. Online make it clear. All right. Let's let them go ahead.
Yeah.
We'll watch it, yeah.
Do you want to just read this? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And they can hear it online, so.
Like so many of us, he just doesn't know how to interact with people with disabilities.
It's pretty easy, really. People with disabilities are people first.
We need the same things that every person needs, like respect.
Good morning, everyone.
Attention.
Okay. Maybe we need to be more specific.
The easiest way to show respect is to focus on the person, not the disability. It's okay. You'll get the hang of it.
One easy way to focus on the person is to watch the person signing and not their interpreter.
Or their companion.
It's really cool that you'd like to help, but do us both a favor and please ask me first. What you think might be helping?
I got you.
Wait, ah! Oh no, might actually not.
If you'd like to offer me help, let me hold on to your elbow. Don't take mine.
Hey, would you like to take my arm?
Sure.
Assistive devices help us to live our lives. They're really important and really personal.
Grabbing them only makes it weird for everyone.
What?
Please only touch our devices and service animals if we've given you permission. And don't take it personally if I ask you not to. Remember that my service animal helps me all the time. Neither of us would like it if we were separated.
Remember, we make our own decisions. We sign documents, vote, volunteer, work, and pay taxes.
We get married.
So don't determine me just because I have a great smile.
Just because I'm blind does not mean I'm deaf.
Just because I'm deaf doesn't mean I'm blind.
And just because I use a wheelchair doesn't mean that I can't sweep you off your feet.
So take a deep breath, relax. We don't bite.
Unless we're really hungry.
Hello there, ladies. How are you?
Hello. And if you're not sure what to do, just ask.
Hi. Would you still like to see a menu?
No thanks, but can you please read it to me?
Sure, definitely.
Just treat us the way you would want to be treated, and we'll all be okay.
Good morning. Good morning. Morning, Alice.
Right.
Awkward no more. Nice job, Bob. Go forth and be human.
There's no need to be awkward.
Okay, I'm gonna try to get out of that. Now I gotta get back to our presentation.
Okay, so now we're just gonna go over briefly, who vocational rehab services is what we do, and then I'm gonna turn it over to Alyssa and then Steve about the partnership. So vocational rehab services is under DEED, Department of Employment and Economic Development. We're an agency under there that serves individuals with disabilities in finding and maintaining employment. The biggest thing for us is employers. It used to be where we would just focus one-on-one with the individual. And 12 years ago or so, when some of our positions came due, it's like, we need employers in here too. And so we've had a really, really big push about partnering with employers and realizing people aren't getting jobs without employers. So we need to have these partnerships out there. So we are a voluntary agency. People come into our services because they want to work, not because they're forced to. Probably some of the 15 and 16-year-olds are probably forced into our services by their parents, but for the most part, it's because people come in because they want to work. We start working with kids in the schools at age 14 and really start digging into them at 15, 16, 17, and can go all the way up to 80 if that's what they want and they want to find a job. So we're all over the state. A big push right now, as Alyssa and Steve are going to talk about, is just our partnerships with the schools and the youth with disabilities. I think right now we're serving about 60%, or is it more, of the people we serve are students, are that transition age students. So big push right now from legislation that's come down to really get those kids with disabilities out into the community and experience jobs. So some of the top occupations, as you can see on here, for some of the VRS talent is office administrative support. This really covers a really broad spectrum of kind of who we serve, but it just goes to show that people with disabilities can do anything that they put their mind to. So we really cover, our occupations cover everything. Some of the things that we provide, our recruitment is one of our biggest things, obviously. We're in the business of getting people employment. And so we meet with businesses and talk about their recruitment and then try to help make those matches. We do tours, job shadows, informational interviews, not only for our youth, but for our adults with disabilities too, is a big thing, is getting them out into the community too, and just kind of finding out, what are you interested in? If they're looking at switching careers, we can help them with tours and job shadows and informational interviews. We have extra funding available for job tryouts and on-the-job training. Sometimes businesses out there get, they hear the word disability, and that's a stigma out there, and they think the person can't do the job. So we're like, hey, why don't you try them out in this job for a little bit, couple weeks, let them prove to you they can do the job, and then kind of scoop them right into that position. So we have funding that we can use for that. And then on the job training, if somebody's missing just a little piece of what they need to be on the job, we can help kind of fund with that too. We provide internships. Not exactly the the internships like the school, we kind of do it a little bit different. It doesn't need to be somebody that has a 4-year degree or a 2-year degree that's looking. It's a little bit different. And if anybody's interested in that, we can talk later about our internship program. A big thing is doing things like this, disability resources, training and consultation. We go out to a lot of businesses and talk to them about hiring people with disabilities. We consult with a lot of businesses if they have an individual that discloses they have a disability and they don't know what to do or what resources to go to, we can help with that. And then as I said, 60% of people we are serving right now is youth. And so we connect with youth and the school districts, and I will pass this over to Alyssa.
Okay, so I apologize because that was unmuted and I didn't want to check the chat and then I saw it. So I apologize that there was interference. So hopefully everyone can hear okay now. And I'll let Marcy move us forward on the slides. I know we were going to show another video. I think Marcy with the technical. Yeah.
So can I ask a question?
Yes.
From Marcy earlier, you had mentioned businesses and internships and that kind of thing. Is there a program that if I'm a business and I would be interested in doing something like this, what is the process I would need to follow on trying to do that? And is it something where me as an employer needs to look at that job or look at that job with you and have that discussion of, I would like to hire somebody into this position. I feel it would be maybe somebody, is there somebody that might be able to do that kind of thing? What is really the process? Because I think there's a stigma and a challenge of, I have some of these jobs. I'd like to employ one of these people, but I don't know what I should think, how I should think. And I'm sure Steve will be able to speak to some of this as well, but kind of get your thoughts on engagement with that.
Yep, great question, Jason. So the process is first to reach out to us. Ron's a specialist, Michelle's a specialist, I'm a specialist. We have several more throughout the state, reaching out to us and having that initial conversation. So what we first do is we sit down and we talk to you about all of your jobs there, because as we kind of mentioned, people with disabilities can do any job. And so we really talk about, what do you have available? A lot of times we love to go in and tour, especially like a manufacturer. It's been great to kind of get into those manufacturing environments. Obviously, we're not going to go tour an office environment. I mean, that you just kind of tell me what you need type of thing. But we really like to go tour and find out what's needed from a business. What positions do you have open? We then send those out to our network of individuals. It can be youth if they're interested in hiring youth. It can be adults. We send them out to just the whole network in the whole area and let those individuals apply and move them forward. We then are there for that business to help with if there are any accommodations that are needed, if there's any extra training that's needed. We're there for kind of the gamut of it. We usually keep our cases open for at least 90 days and making sure somebody is successful and that it's going well for 90 days. We provide follow-up. We're there for the support, kind of the whole part of it.
Is there a funding recommendations as well, salaries, those kinds of things relative to the work that you can have that conversation with as well? Is that all part of that as far as salary wise or anything else like that? Or that all flows into how the company operates and this is how we work?
Yep. So everything we do is at no cost to you. So we can come out and do anything at no cost. When you're hiring anybody with a disability, anybody off the street, it's the same across the board. So, if you pay Joe $20 an hour to do this position, then you're going to pay the person I bring to $20 to do this position type of thing.
Awesome.
Yep. Like I said, we have some extra funding for special occasions of certain things. But for the most part, no, you're hiring them.
Okay.
So.
And then how about, should they need accommodations to get to work? That's also a discussion maybe with you as well, or?
Yep, that's something we should be figuring out beforehand. That's all on our agency to help with that. Not only transportation to work, but childcare, housing, kind of all of that. Those wraparound services is something that we should be figuring out beforehand. Does it always happen? I mean, we do our best. And sometimes, as we all know, transportation is tough for folks that don't have driver's license right now. So, but it's something that we do work with on our end. Yep, thanks.
All right. So my name is Alyssa Klein. Nice to meet all of you online, and we all introduced ourselves a little earlier. And I work with Marcy, and my role is coordinating all of our services for high school students. So I just want to talk a little bit about what we do on that end of things. So as it says on here, we have 2 staff assigned to every high school across the state. So part of my role is just even making sure we have those staff assigned. We have a directory online where, you know, anyone can find who those staff are. Last year, we served over 4,200 students. We're anticipating quite a bit more this year now that COVID isn't impacting as much. This is like the first quote unquote normal kind of back to school year where we're able to be in person. So I've just seen such an increase just even in the level of where people are bringing me in more, and I'm hearing just anecdotally like so much more traction happening, which we're excited about. So we provide 5 primary services to students while they're in high school. And it's pretty self-explanatory, but you can see how what we provide might be provided in schools. But as we always say, as we're going out to schools and letting them know about what we're able to do, is that we're here to help schools enhance or maybe fill in gaps that they're not able to fill. And I can say more about that as I go here. So the first thing that we can provide is job exploration. So that includes helping young people understand their interests and their strengths, and then understanding what jobs are in the job market and help them, you know, explore what is interesting to them. The second one on the list is my favorite, and I think one of the most important things for all youth, whether or not you have a disability. And looking at Amy, I know that's a big part of what you support in the 728 school district, but work-based learning experiences. And for us, that's really broad. It can be, you know, some of the things that Marcy mentioned earlier, as it could be a job shadow, an informational interview, a tour, and we're going to talk a little bit about the tour manufacturing. And it can be where we can help support short-term work experiences. So where we're able to either reimburse an employer or one of our contracted partners for a student to try out a job. And then it's nice for the business because during that short-term experience, which usually we say is an average of 120 hours, that business, you know, is supporting a young person, and then we're reimbursing for the wages during that time. So it's a nice way for the student to try something and for the business to try the student too. So that's a big part of what we're helping with. A lot of schools do have work-based learning programs, but sometimes students aren't able to access them maybe in their school day. Their school day is packed, and so they're not able to. So then we can help with those experiences outside of school. Some schools don't have those programs. So that's where we can come into play. We help them with exploring post-secondary education and training. We really want to make sure all young people are exploring that, since we know that at least 70% of the careers in our workforce require some form of education after high school. Workplace readiness training is helping them learn how to do a job search on their own. How do you do a resume? How, you know, practice interviewing. Also some of those soft skills and helping them be prepared for a job. And then finally, it's instruction and self-advocacy. And that relates to what Marcy had mentioned earlier, is helping them understand their disability and how they can disclose to an employer, or if they even need to disclose. So we help them prepare for that. Oh, you got to do it. I'm forgetting. So I'm going to go through this quickly. We do have 2 flyers that with business as the audience. The first flyer, it says Youth Connections. So we talk about all the ways that we like to partner with businesses. So a lot of those work-based learning opportunities I mentioned. And then the second flyer that we have linked on here is about short-term work experiences. So I won't open those because I know it's complicated with technology, but just know that those are some things, some resources when you get the PowerPoint that you could you could look at too. Another piece to know about our services is that we follow students after high school as well. So we provide those basic services to help them prepare, but then once they've graduated, we can follow along with them all the way until they're successful into a career. So for instance, if they're going into post-secondary education and training, helping them be successful there. Sometimes we're even able to help people pay for that. So that's a nice bonus. So it's a nice long-term service. And if you think of students that maybe had more support, like they were in special ed in high school, you know, that service ends from the high school side when they graduate. So we work real closely with special education in the schools to say, like, we can kind of keep those supports going after you graduate. Okay. So I know what we wanted to do is, it's been exciting working with Steve with MPMA. We've had a partnership this last year, and of course we started our work together with the statewide tour of manufacturing. Of course, again, still during the pandemic, but we were still excited that last year we worked with schools in the metro area. Actually with over 200 students that participated. And this year, keeping it going, and Michelle and Ron are big contributors helping us organize that within our agency. So for us, organizing it, you know, we're used to organizing things on a one-to-one level, like one student needs this and we provide it. And so for us, it's learning about how we can work more broadly with groups of students and with schools that way. And then on the business side as well. Yes, Jason.
Can you go ahead and explain the overall, what is the tour of manufacturing?
Oh, yes.
As an event itself, so please share that as well.
And maybe, I don't know, Steve, you were going to get into that too, and you're going to be better speaking to it than me. Okay, so Steve is going to come up here in one moment and we'll talk more about it. But I'll just say that one of the things that we're really interested in, Steve and I talk about this quite a bit, is we're not, we're interested in getting students on the tours. But for me, even more so, I mean, some students are going to say, hey, I learned that's not for me, or hey, that was interesting. But finding the students that say, yes, that is for me, and continuing that exploration and moving along a career pathway. I know we've talked a lot about career pathways. So if a student says, yes, manufacturing is for me, how we can help, you know, work with the school, work with businesses to, you know, if it's work experiences like the YST program, knowing what's involved with their school, exploring post-secondary and moving them along. If it's not manufacturing, you know, how do we help them look at other career pathways from there? And so either way, I think going on these tours is amazing, and we just got to make sure that we're helping them take those next steps. And that's a big part of what we're going to be doing this year. So I think I think Steve is next, so we'll have him come up. I went through it pretty quickly, but I know we're getting moving along in time here.
We don't have a mobile clicker that can do that. Yeah, there we go.
And I was trying that, but it
It
wasn't
wasn't
working.
How about maybe under still mouse?
Oh, but it's not.
What's an apple? All right, I guess I'll just yell slide.
Mine's a good clicker.
I just don't know. I have some of the slides of the sequence, so I might not be able to see what's next to them, but we'll work with it. So, but thank you, listen, and just a little plug, I guess, on the VRS and kind of why MPMA is excited to partner with VRS. In full disclosure, actually, Alyssa was, we acknowledged Alyssa as our MPMA, what we call board chair appreciation, which is basically one individual in our whole organization across the state that we want to celebrate as being a partner of ours. And I think Alyssa she got the award, but it's indicative of the whole VRS staff and how great they are to work with. But yeah, Alyssa was the one individual in our organization that we identified as kind of a person to celebrate this year. So thanks to Alyssa. Great. Congratulations, I guess.
Thank you so much.
Sure. So I guess a little bit of a plug on what VRS is to us and why we even, I'll get to why we're doing the things we're doing, but more to start with why I picked VRS to work with. And I don't want to go into too much of what Alyssa and Marcy already covered, but from what my perspective, I mean, as Jason talked about before and a couple of the others, in the school system, how
there can be the bureaucracy and the slow moving parts, and it gets frustrating. And from manufacturing, where we want to just get stuff, get it out the door, produce, move on, it can be frustrating. And so when we work with school systems, it's tough to look at the student body, right, and say, what are we going to do to attract the whole student body? Well, that doesn't work real well. VRS, their mindset, as they talked about, is how do we address each student's needs? How do we make sure that we're putting the student first versus the system or that bureaucracy? And so that's what I love about working with VRS, is that they really are focused on the student's best interest. And then because of that, they can get creative. They can think outside the box. They can kind of come up with, alternative options on things. They kind of have what I call backdoor access to the school, where they can get in and get things done rather than having to go through the whole system. So we love that. And their mindset too is, there were a couple of hurdles we had, and Alyssa and her team just said, well, the heck with it, we're going to get it done. It was things that maybe someone else might have said, all right, well, we can't do that, so let's move on to the next thing. And they're like, nope, we're just going to do it. So we love working with them. What kind of instigated the conversation, as Alyssa mentioned, is the tour of manufacturing. So to answer Jason's question, I'm sure a lot of you know what it is, but the specific to the statewide tour of manufacturing, the Manufacturing Center of Excellence, and I know Jeremy's on today, they are kind of the orchestrators of it, of a statewide effort to get basically just introduce. It's primarily focused on K-12 schools, but in reality, it's the community, right? It's getting manufacturing awareness to the communities, primarily education. And so just engaging manufacturers, engaging schools to just set up tours across the state, get students in. And typically we hope to get most of them in October, the statewide, or the month of manufacturing, or the first weekend of October if possible. But there's no prescribed formula for it. It's just set up tours. The Manufacturing Center of Excellence manages the web page where you can go in and register for tours. Different communities have their own information and different kind of ways to promote the tours and whatnot. So it's kind of different around the state, but it's just a great effort to introduce young people to manufacturing. Next slide, please. So why did we need to do some of these things? I guess you can just advance. I got a couple notes in here. You can just go through them. There, one back. There we go. So one thing I'll say is, I picked this picture for a reason, because this kind of looks like a lot of manufacturers. We typically are middle-aged or older white men in our industry, and we have great skilled talent, great people, but we, as I said here, have limited exposure. If you look at over the years who's been in manufacturing, it's that, the white men. We typically don't get exposed to what it means to work with somebody with a disability, among again, many other groups of people. And so we have that lack of awareness on what it means, what it looks like, how to make it happen. Manufacturers like to have things they can measure and things that are tangible. And so when it comes to engagement, I've told Jason before, as you mentioned, I'm on his board of advisors. I don't like his board. It's the worst board I've been on, because they make us engage, they make us talk, they make us think about things and come up with things outside the box. And as a manufacturer, I want to quantify it and okay, here's how we get it done. And they want to push me to be interactive and all that. And so not that we're antisocial, but in manufacturing, we like to focus on getting the job done. And so when it comes to engagement and talking about well, how is it going to make someone feel if you refer to them a certain way? It's screw that, just get the job done. Not that we're not compassionate, but it's easier to just focus on getting the job done. And so again, VRS is a great resource to help us understand, again, not just, and I'll talk about it in a little bit as far as kind of the groups of people, but not thinking about it as, a group of people we have to adapt to, but just a general population of people. And both Marcy and Alyssa hit on this, that we all have differences, right? Whether it's a disability or personality traits or whatever it is, we all have to kind of adapt to each other. So again, when you look at the history of MPM or of manufacturing, when you look at the demographics, when you ask most manufacturers why they got into manufacturing, it typically is, well, my grandpa was a tool maker, my dad was a tool maker, both in the Navy. I joined the Marine Corps. I joined the military because my dad and grandpa. I joined manufacturing because my dad and my grandpa. My brother's manufacturer. That's the typical answer, is because they know people who are in it. And so how are you going to expand your workforce into different groups of people when your current workforce is pretty isolated. And so that's one of our biggest challenges, is how do we expand our workforce if every person who's doing recruiting, and I don't mean HR, but I mean the machinist who goes and just influences their niece or nephew or neighbor or whatever, if all we see is white men without disabilities, why would we have a good chance of recruiting other people from other groups? So so we're limited in that respect, and that's why we have to, as an industry, start looking at how do we challenge these mindsets? How do we start looking at things differently? Again, we are compassionate, we are inclusive. I mean, every manufacturer I know would hire anyone who can do the job. They don't care, but it becomes kind of an apathetic view of, I don't care, just give me a good skilled person. But well, that's fine, but you're never going to take the next step forward then, because you need to actually say, well, no, I need to actually adapt. I need to open my eyes. I need to understand different groups of people better in order to bring them in. So it can't just be open to all. You have to actually go up and get them, right? You have to engage with them. You have to find out where their communities are. Next slide, please, Marcy. So what I kind of alluded to is that, and this is why I answered Marcy's quiz earlier the way I did, and saying, well, I don't know that we put any description on a group, whether it's disabilities or ethnic groups or whatever, because they're groups of people. They're all like, I love that statement you made, Marcy, about since you've met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person. Like that's one person. So and Alyssa and I have talked about this a lot, and that from our standpoint as an association, as an industry, yeah, we want to grow our demographics by bringing in people with disabilities, but also people of color and women and different age groups or whatever. We just want to bring in more people, and instead of putting them in silos and saying, well, how do we get people with disabilities? It becomes a tough hurdle for manufacturers to overcome those perceptions, because if we look at, again, a silo and say, how do we get people with disabilities? Then you start to qualify that and saying, how do I get people who are deaf? How do I get people in a wheelchair? Again, how do we move away from the groups and just say, how do I get this one person? And whether that person has one disability or one different background than others, looking at it more individually makes it more palatable, right? And if I mean, I had one manufacturer that worked with Ron and brought in a group of deaf students, I think. I can't remember if it was deaf students, but anyways, they got a busload of students, and they said, I don't know what to do. I don't really have the opportunity to hire people with a disability. So what am I supposed to do with this busload? It's like, well, you're not hiring a busload of people with disabilities. You're looking, the primary purpose is to get awareness, but outside of that, you're just looking for one person, right? I mean, if you're a 30-person company, you're not hiring a busload of people. All you're looking for is maybe you get one student out of that, one young person out of that, again, if they've got a disability, you're just looking at working with that person rather than how do I accommodate all deaf people? Like that's not the objective. It's just to hire another person. So as I mentioned here, it doesn't matter whatever the background, whatever the skill, the ability, or disability, we're just trying to bring in more people, right? And so how do we keep opening those doors, whether it's a door to a disability or a door to a person of color, or again, any group that we as an industry don't currently, again, I try to end up talking about it in silos or in groups like that. The intent is to say it doesn't matter. They're all different groups. How do you just start looking at each individual person and making sure that they're included in what you bring in for your workforce? And again, if you look at the stereotypes of those groups, it just makes it scary for the manufacturers. And that's one of the messages I want to share today, because I know it's mostly educators in this group, that when you're talking to manufacturers, it's not that they're not willing, it's just that they don't understand what they need to do. And again, if you talk about the system and you talk about, well, we need tens of thousands of students or we're talking about hundreds of school districts or whatever, it's just so overwhelming. And I'm a 30-person company. What am I supposed to do with that? Don't worry about it. Worry about the one person that you're trying to attract. Again, I mentioned earlier, I come from industry. We always wanted to get that busload of students. That's what I always talk about success. And you talk about some of the groups around the state, like Mankato, that does a great job, and they do get busloads of students into a lot of their shops, and that is fantastic. But at the end of the day, again, I'm not trying to get busloads. And when I look back at my company's tours of manufacturing that we did, we didn't look at them as successful at the time. Oh, we didn't get that bus load. We got 6, 8, 10, whatever it was here and there. But now looking back, I realized we had some of the best talented apprentices and interns that came out of some of these things over the years and that are still with us today that are amazing superstar employees. And that's all we needed, right? That was the success, is just getting those individuals. So again, plain and simple, as the industry needs labor, that's what we're focusing on, is how do we just make it more open so that any labor can come in. Next slide, please, Marcy. I guess I did talk about some of this stuff in the bureaucracy, slow system. I think there may be one more. Nope, sorry, go back. But again, I mean, you know, when I look at, and again, I've shared some of this with Alyssa and Ron and Michelle, just some of the individuals that I've encountered over the years. And I think about, again, the talent and the opportunity with any individuals. And we just celebrated a young woman who was going to Dunwoody in the welding program, and she's on the autistic spectrum, and she was like a superstar, and she's done really well. And I think about a young man that I know pretty well that had has Asperger's, and growing up, and it was like that he just could not be successful at anything. It felt like it was, I mean, he couldn't be social, and it's like, how can he ever hold down a job? And it was, he was scared for his future. And now he found the right fit for a career path, and he is doing fantastic, and he's brilliant at what he does. They're celebrating him. They're promoting him. I mean, he's got a career path, and it's just really cool to see. And so, I mean, we all know individuals like that, right? And I mean, I've got a deaf machinist that I've worked with for years, and he's an outstanding machinist. I mean, just does fantastic. And I told Ron, I mean, we were talking about maybe having him post tours, and the machinist said, well, no, I don't want to be a deaf machinist. I'm a machinist. And he didn't want to be singled out to be the guy who gives deaf tours. Like, so again, that helped me understand a little bit more perspective on how individuals, again, look at some of these things. And one of the cool things that I heard from one of our board members, and I think this approach holds true to any of these situations, is that this isn't, I mean, Marcy mentioned, well, we can, VRS is there to help 90 days or more. Well, as a manufacturer, we can't look at, or educator, we can't look at a 90-day window and say, okay, we've accomplished that. I mean, you may kind of have the process started, but if somebody's got something that they need, I mean, whether it's disabilities or life issues to deal, those things don't just suddenly disappear in 90 days. They don't just suddenly become assimilated in 90 days. I mean, it's sort of a lifetime approach, but in reality, if you look at it as kind of a 2 or 3 year approach of, hopefully in that time, everything's kind of like at least stabilized, where you understand the person, they understand you, that you're kind of intertwined in your culture and personalities. But as a hiring employer, you have to look at that and say, I'm not hiring somebody that, okay, once we figure out the transportation issues, we're good. Or once I've set up the work cell to accommodate a wheelchair, we're good. Like, no, it's going to take time. It's going to take, until that person's comfortable and feels like they're a part of your organization. And so looking at it from a 2 to 3 years perspective, and again, it could be longer than that, but at least being in it for the long haul, I think is important for manufacturers to look at it. And you may need VRS's support throughout that, or other resources. But just understanding that's a long haul approach. I think I just have one more slide if you want to move into that, Marcy. So I've always been a big proponent of grassroots efforts. I mean, when I was just a manufacturer involved in MPMA, again, I heard all this stuff about statewide efforts and the school system and everything. It just, for me as a manufacturer, it was overwhelming. I didn't know what to do with it. You start hearing all these acronyms and different programs on the state, and it's tough to try and internalize that and be a part of it. So you can just advance the couple of notes in here. Maybe it's just one. So I guess my recommendation to manufacturers specifically is, again, to just focus on those grassroots efforts. How do you engage with one high school, one tech school, one student at a time, and just keep, avoiding generalities, avoiding the shotgun approach, and avoiding the rah-rah around it, right? I mean, it's a student, or it's a student, it's an employee. Focus on the long term instead of, trying to look for the big bang, like exciting, just how do you create a sustainable relationship with a school that, again, the tour is a great tool. And that's, I mean, Alyssa and I talk about that a lot, that a tour of manufacturing is a great start. And if that's all you do, it's okay, but it's not a long-term relationship. I mean, the schools that are in the room, you guys probably have advisory boards and you have companies who partner with your programs. And we talked about the, you know, the ability to have maybe mentors in the classroom, you know, people from the shop floor that go to the classroom. How do you start setting up some of those relationships, or, you know, summer internships and regular tours? I mean, quarterly tours maybe, so that it is set up for long-term success. Because otherwise, these students, they get a little splash of exposure, and that's good. It's a start. But again, you need to make sure the school, the instructors have that long-term support, those long-term partnerships. So that, I mean, I'm excited to talk more about ideas and how to make those. I mean, and I know like the MTEA is still in existence, but I think we used to do better at kind of collaborating within the state too, so that schools knew what other schools are doing. And sometimes when I talk to schools now, I find that some aren't even familiar with what other schools have done or what they're successful with. So I think that's something we need to do more of, is sharing those success stories, and sharing some best practices within schools and within manufacturers, so that we could start building on that. And instead of trying to duplicate things or recreate things, we can just say, well, you're already doing it. You've already gotten buy-in from the superintendent. You've already got buy-in from the community. Hopefully that becomes, you know, an example that, you know, we can kind of just move forward within another community. So I think there's a lot of great things we've got going on within the state. I think we need to be able to, again, make it more sustainable, make it more widespread. And then again, when it comes to working with VRS, how do we share some of these or celebrate some of these situations, these tours and whatnot that have been successful, and keep spreading it? Because right now, I mean, Alyssa mentioned some numbers. Well, those are the, you know, that's the first steps, right? And how do we get it to be a little more widespread? So we're going to be working. In fact, I'm excited if some of you are connected with me on LinkedIn. I just posted about a hire for a workforce development person. So if you know of anyone, we're going to be going full steam ahead next year on doing more of this outreach and more support for each manufacturer at a time. Again, the grassroots efforts is how do we help every single manufacturer reach out to every, you know, single students, and then engage with the schools. So I'm excited about what we'll be doing. And as Alyssa pointed out earlier too, is that it's not all about manufacturing. I mean, I'm hoping we're creating kind of a model that we spread. I mean, I'll be selfish and push manufacturing, but really it applies to any industry. So yeah, I think that's all I had.
Alyssa, can you speak to the number of available people that you're currently working with that might be able to do employment like this, or this kind of employment? Do you have numbers, an idea of the number of young people that would
Young
seek
people?
employment? Yeah.
Well, so there are between the grades of 9 through 12, there are 50,000 students who are in special education and who have a 504 plan. So those are students that are tracked. Our agency, as I mentioned last year, worked with 4,200 of those students, but we have the connection with every school. So even if they're not on our caseload, we have those ways of being connected at the school. So it is a large number. Another thing I do want to say though, and you know, again, I'm looking at Amy because we're both from Elk River and we go way back. You know, I just think about what's already happening in the schools and how, and also to what Steve was saying, like we want to see more integrated programming as well. So it's not just like the students with disabilities over here or the busload of students with disabilities. Like how do we integrate that programming so that students with disabilities are just a part of everything else that's happening? I heard from a career and tech ed teacher the other day who said, I learned the other day, there's a student in my classroom who is in special education. And his teacher told me that he only comes to school for my class. It's unfortunate that he doesn't, but that's, you know, for a lot of young people, you hear that at times that they don't like school, but he comes for that career and tech ed class. So I think about how do we engage more of our young people in CTE and help them with what's going on. So So I know I went way beyond what you were asking. There's a lot of students, but, and then how do we make sure they're just a part of what all the students in high school are getting? So I also know we're like, are we like on our agenda? We were gonna do some discussion time. I bet people are ready for that. Oh, I think, oh. You could probably do it up there too, but I will check that chat. Hello, chat. Where is
Steve,
it?
somebody wants you to send the
Where is it?
job posting you referenced.
Oh, there it is.
I looked at our classes before I came to this action class at Elk River to see how many special ed students we have. And I would say about 20% of
Oh,
our
nice.
section class have an IEP.
Oh, great.
So I know our CTE teachers will say a lot of times they have quite a few special ed students in their classroom.
Yeah,
So
that's
it is-
awesome.
They enjoy not to make a generalization, but the tangible, more hands-on.
Hands-on. I'll tell you, I got one other story, just real quick. My son is an example. He struggled with mental health things, and during, he was a junior in high school when the pandemic hit, and he ended up unfortunately dropping out. But he was doing great in school, but he just couldn't learn through online learning, and he just didn't stay engaged. Thankfully, he got his GED earlier this spring, and he went on a tour this summer. We did a tour that we worked with Steve on of a manufacturing business, and he was like, he just got hired on at a manufacturer. We were just talking about that, entry level at this point. I definitely want him to move into more education and training, but he's an example of somebody, like, for him, that hands-on, like for him, the online, all of that, it was really hard for him, and being able to see it and try it, I think, is so huge for so many of our young people with or without disabilities. So anyway.
Well, it looks like there's a question on the chat.
Yeah, can you talk about the diversity of the students, participants, and strategies used to recruit?
Maybe is that for me? I think it's diversity of the student participants. And I know Eva. Hi, Eva. Maybe Eva, you can can she come off mute even? I want to make sure I'm answering the right question. Or if it was for me. Maybe we won't hear her though, because we couldn't hear anything. If it was in tours, like we were recruiting from any students. Again, we were students with disabilities, so across the board, students in the high schools. So I'm not sure. And then we were working with the school staff. So again, we work primarily, or we have typically worked with special education, but we want to be working across the school into school counseling, gen ed, and just across the board, because students may or may not, we can work with students whether or not they're identified as having a disability with the school. So they don't have to be in special ed. That's where a lot of those students may be with mental health. My son, again, is an example. He wasn't in special ed, but he struggled. He could really use that extra help while he was in school. So anyway. Thank you, Michelle. I don't know if people can hear.
Tours are being shared within the schools. We have a contact through our staff assigned to that school. And so we're, kind of the middle person is reaching out directly to the school. But as other students are hearing about the employer tours, they're asking to come along. One of the tours we've set up is Caterpillar in Osseo. Maple Grove High School alone is bringing like 60 students. We don't have 60 students that are registered with VR. We could potentially, but it's being opened up to other students,
That's
how
great.
cool is it to go to Caterpillar painting and see the big equipment for the manufacturer of it. So, we're not only including students with disabilities, there's other students that are interested or welcome.
I don't know if everyone heard that online, but Michelle was just talking about how we're working with both students with and without disabilities in the tours that we're setting up.
So in our district, we do the tours of manufacturing a little bit different, that we partner with the chamber and we do them in the evening. So it is smaller groups, but it's so that parents are involved because as you said, Steve, it is so much about what parents influence their children to do. So I would say we probably had about 45 this year and we toured 4 different facilities. I see was there. One of our teachers from the transitional program, which is our 18 to 21 students with disabilities, take a couple of students with and take them out using the bus so that they could experience manufacturing too that were interested. So providing and advertising that through the school district, I will say I would love to see a lot more people there, but parents' evenings doesn't always happen. I know that there was a 9th grader when we were going through Metalcraft and there was one of the big CNC machines and he's like, oh my God, can I take a picture of that and send that to my class? Because they will think it's so cool. And Metalcraft's like, no, you can't. I'll send you a link to what it is in like a magazine or online so that you can share it. But just seeing some of the excitement from some of the kids was super exciting. And then, you know, the parents standing there saying, oh yeah, I'm glad. But the parent also said, we asked 5 of his other friends to come along for the tour and couldn't get any of them to commit. So it's sometimes it's about having the right kids there because we also, our manufacturing instructor will say, I love having manufacturers come in and talk to the students and then offer a time that they can go tour outside of their school day so that you're not getting the kids that just want to screw around and have the day off of school, but you're really getting the serious interested kids in manufacturing coming. And so that can be anyone with a disability, female, male, but really trying to include everybody. So, and that seems to be successful and employers actually do prefer, I mean, they have to do more work to set up individual tours, but then parents might come with too in the evening as well.
Yeah, they did a great job with that. In fact, the second one that we went to, CDI, they had 3 people ask for applications, 3 students asked for applications after the tour. And they're just like, I didn't know you did this. I didn't know. And they hire a ton of youth. I mean, couple of my son's friends work there and love it. What was great about this location is that they said, if you want to work 3 hours, we can work around that. If you want to work 10 hours, so being open is, I think, going to get more students interested too, instead of like, well, sorry, you have to work full time. Well, they can't. So this place had a ton of students working and they teach them on the job. They were teaching them welding. I mean, just all this different stuff. It was great to see this. I think what's interesting too is, thanks for the email, because if my son would have got it, I would have never heard about it, you know, but when parents get the email, I'm like, we're doing this. You don't have an option. We're going out, we're checking this out. And it was great. It really opened his eye too. Is he completely interested in manufacturing? He didn't know, you know, they're 16, 17, 18 years old. They don't know what manufacturing is about a lot of times. So I would love to see where having them just go out and see these places, whether they're interested or not, because I think once they go out and see some of these places, it opens their eyes up. And so
what, with VRS, what eligibility requirements do you have to receive the services that you have spoke to earlier? You know, the different opportunities, you know, when it comes to like helping with job exploration, the help with post-secondary, you know, tuition. Things that you mentioned, what eligibility do you have for graduating high school students or people who are also already enrolled in post-secondary?
Yeah, for eligibility, well, for young people, we have kind of 2 levels of services. So for those basic, you know, I had those 5 services, job exploration, work-based learning, some of those things while they're in high school, it's pretty easy to be eligible. We just need verification from a professional that the student has a disability. They fill out an application form. So a teacher could just sign off, yes, the student has a disability. And so that's really nice. That's like new for our program. We're a federally mandated program. And so we go by what the feds say. And so we were so excited that they opened it up. So it's pretty easy for high school students to get our services. Then we have a second level, like our full VR program where we, we look at sometimes paying for school or things like that. It's a more rigorous eligibility where we have to get documentation. But, most students in special education, again, are eligible for the full VR program. They just need to have that documented disability and then it impacts them in some way. So
Does that move forward from the high school to the secondary?
post-secondary,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
so.
the IEP like goes away when you start college and stuff. So how does that work? If they were, does IEP, is that looked at before, after they graduate, or how does that work?
Well, yep, once the student graduates from high school, yeah, the IEP ends, so to speak. But that, in terms of going on to post-secondary, and I know some of our post-secondary folks might speak to it better than me, but they can still use that to say, this is what I got while I was in high school. If it's not like the most updated evaluation, like we help with that. We work with the disability services at the college campus if that student needs that extra, like some modifications or things like that. But it's not, I think what we try to educate students and families is that when you go into post-secondary education, I just use the term modification. They're not always the extensive services that you get in special ed. You still, you might be able to take your test outside of class or get a note taker. But in terms of modifying a class, that doesn't necessarily happen. So I misspoke there. But yeah, that's what we help them kind of walk through together, and understanding that and finding the right people that help them through that.
And maybe add to that, hi, I'm Mike Garrity, I'm a former special ed teacher, academic dean, and now I'm a work-based learning coordinator.
Oh, where are you
but
at?
I'm at MTS Secondary right in Minneapolis.
Oh, nice.
So we're busy, that's why I was late, but if that student that has an IEP has a 504 plan, that's a federally mandated plan that the college has to abide by. The IEP is only for secondary up to age 21, but does not apply for post-secondary. So if a child is going to college, you want to make sure they have an updated 504 plan, usually do that right through school council.
Are there any other questions from anyone online?
You can send it through chat, or they can go ahead off of mute. We can have that discussion as well.
Oh, I hear. Speakers were muted, that's why.
Any other questions from the team here?
Jim, I hate to put you on the spot, but would you mind just talking about the uniquely abled program?
Sure, we got 3 hours, Jason.
But we'll time you. Yeah, I wonder, I'd love for everyone online to hear what you have done.
Oh, I get the hot seat.
Yes, I think you'll all enjoy hearing from Jim. Yes, go for it. I'm gonna take the presentation off. Here.
Okay.
Share.
All right. So I'm Jim Hansen. I'm from South Central College, Dean of Business and Industry there. And I also oversee our customized workforce education program, which is all your non-credit trainings, continuing education and customized training. So this past year, actually 2 years ago, I started the process of creating what we call the Uniquely Abled Academy. And we had the idea of partnering with this program out in California called the Uniquely Abled Project. And they are trying to promote CNC machining for young adults on the autism spectrum. And they just see a direct correlation between the finite skill sets and working by yourself and doing things that accompany a lot of individuals on the spectrum, along with doing very well in machining. And so we partnered up. Dr. Harding VP at Anoka Tech, was our Dean of Career Tech Ed at the time. She helped us get it to where we had the faculty get involved. So we created a 12-week program using our college faculty to do a non-credit training. It resulted in a NIMS credential. So there was a credential at the end. And then if the students are able to get that credential, then they receive 3 credits of prior learning for the program. So we had a $100,000 innovation grant from DHS to launch it. We tried it the first time, couldn't get enough for a cohort. Tried it the second time, had enough for a cohort, but then we ran into transportation problems. We couldn't find people to transport our students from Owatonna to our Faribault campus, which is like 15 miles. So it was dead in the water. So we tried it again this past summer on our North Mankato campus, and we wound up getting 19 applicants, accepted 12, 11 of them finished, 9 of them were able to pass the NIMS credential, and are now working as machinists. 7 of the 9 are working as machinists. 2 are enrolled at South Central College, continuing on in the machine tool technology program. So it was, it's amazing. It's just absolutely amazing what we do for those young adults. And we didn't say you need to prove to us you've got a diagnosis that you're on the spectrum. If VRS, we worked with a lot of VRS agencies in our area, and the job coaches would say they don't have a diagnosis, but they kind of fit the mold. Sure, bring them in. We would have grandparents call us. Our grandson, would do very well in it. He liked industrial technology classes in high school. Does he fit into the program? We're like, yeah, bring him in, see if it works. So we had open houses, and we had the whole 9 yards just to see if they were comfortable being there. We had to hire a success coach. That was the biggest one. She was a paraprofessional at a local high school, or like local elementary school, and we hired her full-time. So we had a full-time paraprofessional working with our 2 faculty, who the faculty had never worked. They'd worked with students in their classroom that were probably on the spectrum. They never knew it. Now they're providing accommodations to 11 different students every day for 12 straight weeks. And so we had to have that extra support in there. And they learned a lot on how to benefit. Then we took some of that money, and we had I think it was started off as like a 1 hour, but I think it went to about 3.5 hours, where we invited local employers and other faculty members. And we said, we're going to have someone come in, a professional that works with individuals on the spectrum, and they're going to teach you how to identify whether or not an individual possibly is on the spectrum, and how you can help eliminate triggers, eliminate hurdles, and make it easier for them, whether it's when you're interviewing them, or if they're hired and they're working on the floor next to you, or if they're in your classroom. And that was a benefit like you would not believe. People loved it. So we recorded it, we shared it out to hundreds of more people, and the employers benefited from it on how to, especially in their HR departments, and how they can interact and better make it easier for individuals to, overcome some of the hurdles that they face daily. So it was a wonderful success. It costs a lot of money. So we're looking at doing it again in the future, again next year. And we're actually looking at doing it not just for CNC, but for print press operator, because we have a employer partner in Mankato that does a lot of print press, and they need print press operators. And again, it's work by yourself, work in your station, a lot of computer numeric controlled stuff, and individuals on the spectrum really thrive in those areas. So we're looking at doing that, creating a curriculum for that, and launching our second academy, second one in CNC, and then our first academy in print press operator. So it's really cool. We had employers come in and do mock interviews with the students at the end, and I call it mock interviews because they were really interviewing them, and it's really what it was. And they were bringing them in full time at the end. So it was very good. So that's how I met Alyssa, was through that. Talked to Steve about it, trying to get some employer partners from the area involved in it. And it's just really a huge network, just a fantastic network. And we're the only one in Minnesota doing it. We're the 10th in the nation. There's one in Milwaukee, one in Ohio. Otherwise, it's California, Florida, East Coast. So anybody can do it. You just have to have champions at the faculty level. You have to have champions at the high school level and regional level, local level to fill in the individuals and kind of give you a vacuum of students coming in. And otherwise, it's just all happy feel good stuff at the end. The employers get trained individuals. The students are happy. We had a graduation. Oh, the smiles were amazing. It was just fantastic. It was just so good to see. And these individuals range from 18 to 32. I think our oldest is 32 and he was engaged. Some of them had licenses, some of them didn't. Some drove from Wells, which is down on I-90. They drove an hour plus up every day with their parents. The parents actually drove them up. So we had to find some funding in a different roundabout way to get them this funding to pay for the, some gas cards every once in a while went to the parents to make it worth their while to bring them up. But there was an employer in that small town of Wells that was just chomping at the bit to hire this person once they got their CNC, certificate, their NIMS credential, and brought him on as an operator. So it was really, really cool, really successful. So thanks for asking.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So if everybody wants any information, please reach out. Happy to share with you guys. And as we kick it off and go further, I think we'll hopefully get 2 more going in the future and keep it going.
And can you speak to about how the businesses, once they went into the businesses, how about the employee dynamics as far as engagement with, somebody with autism? I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of employers and employees that are like, oh no, what do I need to do? Like you mentioned, trigger points. Can you speak to that and really how that training has had a benefit, not only the owners, but also the employees around them?
It really I'm not there every day to see how they interact, but at least from a people management standpoint, I was able to see the lights go on in their heads as to, okay, they may not have expressly said to us in these meetings, we have these barriers set up and we're not properly, ready and vetted to bring in people on the spectrum, but you could see in their eyes that they're like, oh crap, we should be doing some things differently, or we did this instead, or we did this in our interview process and we should not be doing that in our interview process. And quite frankly, to begin with, the reason why I reached out to Steve is because I could not get enough employers on board because they were scared. They were scared to bring it on at the beginning. There were some, I'll just point out right off the bat, Winiger in Waseca, a champion. They were a champion from the get-go. They knew about the 50%, right? You can only work part-time. If you work over part-time, then you might be making too much money. And then the families, if they receive too much money, then they don't receive the Fed benefits. And they knew all of that stuff. They're informing us about it. They're like, do you sure you want to do full-time? Because we could hire them part-time. I'm like, why would you want to hire them part-time? They're like, don't you know? If they do this, this, and this, they might not be eligible for this, that, and the other thing. And I was like, oh my goodness. So there are people out there, there are employers that are champions of this already, that will help you out and say, yes, they are fantastic employees and we would love to share what we've done in the past. 3M came on. There's some other large companies that came on that said, yeah, we would love to take on any of these employer students that come through. So you just have to find the people nearby because the champions are out there.
Yeah, and it sounds like a common theme that we're kind of hearing today, right? I mean, it was really, and Steve, I think you pointed that out as well. It's businesses are unsure and they think it's a whole group of people and that it's really one person at a time. And what does it look like to be able to have this one person at a time come into my company? I mean, we're needing the workforce. People are wanting to work and wanting to earn, and these are some people that can go ahead and contribute to help fill that gap on these workforce challenges.
The one area that I will admit, we did not, it's an area, and I'm not sure if you see this across the state or not, but out of the 19 applicants, we only had one person of color. And so I didn't know if that was indicative of the community that we come from, but Mankato is a diverse community. So I didn't know if it was, do we see that at the state level from giving diagnoses to individuals? Is it more dominant toward, white individuals, students in school? Are we seeing more white students being given the IEPs and the 504s over BIPOC students? Those are the questions that I started to see at the very end. Was the light bulb just came on, like, oh my goodness, we had 19 and only 1. So I'm not good at math, but that's not indicative of our community. So it wasn't a true mirror image. So that's something that we definitely need to work on for future cohorts, is seeing how we can identify that and do better.
But the
So-
employers you were working with, how did you see race in the employers? Was it a reflection of the community? Or
Well-
was it majority?
They reflect those employers, like Steve said, a lot of middle-aged and aging white guys at those places. But we're bringing in individuals with zero manufacturing background, just looking at the case, the county and the state agencies and the independent agencies in our area and their job coaches. Do you have someone that is either diagnosed as being on spectrum or has the tendencies of being on spectrum and would be a good fit for this? And it was white person after white person after white person that was brought up to us. So that was perplexing to me and still is perplexing to me.
Their references weren't even manufactured. It wasn't, I mean, the grandma who referenced to get, maybe that grandma had experience, but otherwise.
Yeah,
the-
it was just most referrals were, we reached out to these job coaches and said, do you have someone that is probably bagging groceries at Hy-Vee, but used to take classes, high-tech classes in high school and enjoyed them and would like to do this instead of doing what they're doing with their current, job. That was basically the sales pitch to go out to them. So there really wasn't going out to the manufacturing centers where they are primarily white men working and saying, do you know anybody? And so they bring us white men. It was basically reaching out to all these different agencies, and we just wound up with 18 out of 19 individuals who were white. So
Yeah, I just think sometimes when you don't have people of color in an industry, they don't necessarily see themselves as going into that industry, just like we do in education and teaching, we don't. It's true, we have the same issue.
So anyway, thanks for the time.
Thank you.
Yeah, enjoyed talking about it.
Awesome.
Good job.
Great work.
Right. Is there anything on the chat? Anybody remote want to go ahead and pipe in with some questions? Anything we can help out with? Identify. Are we all good there? All right. Are there any more conversations here? Are we good? Okay, well, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna throw this up to everyone. And you'll see here, I'm going to throw into the chat. Of course, I'm going to upload the agenda, and on the agenda is a survey. So please fill out the survey. The QR code is in there as well. So please fill that out. It looks like our next. I'll be right back. Our next event, we'll be looking at I'm looking at Tuesday, April 18th, 2023. That'll be our next event for that. Always looking for input from the survey, and I'm not much on having a meeting just to be able to have a meeting to suck up time. So if we're done with the content, I like to just move on. I want to thank our speakers. I want to thank the people that showed up. I want to thank the people that showed up online as well. I hope you picked up just a tidbit here or there or whatever. I appreciate you joining us today. Again, if you need the professional development time, just go ahead and contact me, jason.bruns@mnsu.edu, if you need that professional development time. And again, thank you all. Thank you for joining us, and look forward to our next event. So check out our website as well. It'll be on our website. So thank you all and take care.